City Matters.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Legacy Chronicles. My name is Zachary Graulich, and I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at HMTC. And today I am joined by John Woolf. John is a Holocaust survivor. So thank you so much, John, for being here today.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. So I would love if you could tell me and our listeners briefly when and where you were born and a little bit about your childhood, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I was born in what used to be Czechoslovakia, the eastern end of the country, which is called Transcarpathia. I learned languages, German, Czech, Hungarian, all at the same time. We lived there until we got deported to a ghetto in Hungary. The name of the ghetto was Máté Szalka Ghetto. From the ghetto, we went to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and when the Russians were approaching in 1945, we were moved on the death march to a train in Gliwice. Gliwice, we rode all the way to near Berlin in a place called Oranienburg. From Oranienburg, I was transported to Flossenbürg. Flossenbürg, I got liberated by the American troops.
Wow.
I spent about 2.5 months in an American hospital, and from there I went back to Czechoslovakia, where I found out that my mother was in Bucharest, liberated. I took the train to Bucharest, which took about a week. Found my mother, and fairly soon we got word that my father actually survived and was alive. And we met him in a place called Kare, which is where my mother was brought up. My mother's youngest brother was already a doctor in the United States, in New York. We got in touch with him, and he made arrangements that we took a ship from Sweden to New York. So we arrived in 1946 to New York Harbor. Long story short, I went to college in Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York State, graduated as an engineer, and ended up working for a company called Hughes Aircraft Company. I spent almost 27.5 years working for them, traveling all over the country. And in 1996, decided to join my mother, who was living in Manhattan, but I didn't like living in Manhattan, so I lived in New Jersey. In New Jersey, there was a Brookdale Community College that I decided to visit and possibly take some courses. And I saw a building with a sign, Holocaust Center. I didn't immediately go there, but on my next visit, I rang the bell and entered the Holocaust Center and found a lady who was a director. Her first name was Erica, last name Rosenblatt. And as soon as we started talking and she found out I was an engineer, she said, "I have a new computer, but I don't know what to do with it." I said, "I'll help you, Erica, if you like." So I spent a couple of days putting the computer together and setting it up for the center. Long story short, I became the help me guy for almost everything. I became the treasurer. I joined the small group of people who guided the center of what to do, and worked there for almost a year and a half. At the center, they talked me into starting to talk about my past life and visiting schools. We also had put together some exhibits that were exhibited in various parts of New Jersey, mainly. That's when I started talking about my past.
Wow.
Until then, I spent very little time, even with my parents when I visited New York. We didn't talk much about the Holocaust.
Yeah. So when you came to America with your family, you know, obviously I'm sure with all the adjustments of trying to rebuild this new life for yourselves, was your family one of those that really wanted to, in many ways, forget what happened and not really bring it up often?
Not really. My father and my mother often discussed things of how it went. We were one of the few families where a father, a mother, and a son actually survived and met and successfully created a new life.
Right.
Because I did not live with them as an engineer, I was in California, they were in New York. Whenever I could, I came to visit. But we didn't have time to talk about what really happened in Auschwitz.
Right.
My father decided when he was in a sanatorium to spend his time writing his story from before Auschwitz and during Auschwitz. That story I really translated once I retired from Hungarian to English, and that story will be available digitally from the museum in Washington.
Oh, wow.
I gave it to them.
Wow.
We were not a family that spent much time talking about things in Auschwitz. We did talk about life in Karpaten-Russland. We did talk about our grandparents, my grandparents, because I wanted to know about them.
Yeah.
My grandfather on my mother's side was my best pal. My grandfather on my father's side was not alive anymore. But my grandmother on my father's side was alive. My grandmother on my mother's side died in Auschwitz. So there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
My life, I could not discuss much of the work that I did because it was classified. But we communicated by recorded tape, even while I was in Korea or I was in Australia or wherever I was. So, remembering what went on in Auschwitz, I really started remembering when I started working at the Holocaust Center in New Jersey.
That was the first time that you really started to think about it and write it down and try to detail it for others people to remember. When it comes to your parents, you mentioned that your father later in his life started writing things down and writing down his experiences. Did he or your mother ever speak about it ever? Were they recorded? maybe by the Shoah Foundation? Did they ever speak to public audiences about it, or they were very private about those experiences?
My parents were busy trying to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
They were not in a circle where they were invited to speak about their past experiences. So the answer is my mother's brother, who was a surgeon in New York, when we started talking while eating dinner or socially being together about our grandparents or what happened in Auschwitz, he would leave the room. He could not tolerate the fact that his mother was killed and burned in a crematorium.
Yeah.
So in our family, discussions about Auschwitz were a no-no.
Understood.
I would have never started talking about it if I hadn't been involved with the Holocaust Center in New Jersey.
And what was that like for you when you first started to really put down this testimony on paper and be filmed? What was that like for you, that experience?
To some extent, it was painful. First of all, I never, prior to my living in New Jersey, had bad dreams about what happened. As soon as I started talking about it, I started having these bad dreams. I still have bad dreams. Yeah. So it was not a pleasant experience. But my brain must have gotten adjusted to it. Mm-hmm. So I can talk about it without being painfully involved. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind conversations about what happened.
And how long were you involved in the Holocaust Center in New Jersey?
I started getting involved in 96, and I left the New Jersey area to come to live in New York State in 2001. So it's about 5 years, roughly.
And during that time, did you ever, aside from the work that you've mentioned that you did there, did you ever speak to young people or schools throughout those experiences?
Yes, I did.
And what was that like?
Well, it was kind of interesting. Some of the young people were not too interested. Although they wanted to meet me and that sort of thing, and meet a survivor, but they didn't really want to spend much time on it. In the center, we created what we called suitcases. We actually took a suitcase, filled it up with all sorts of related articles, documents, photographs from Auschwitz, the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, and we sent the suitcases to schools that requested it. Mm-hmm. It was a good experience, and I think we helped mostly youngsters and teachers to prepare them for meeting Holocaust survivors.
Absolutely.
I don't know if the center is still doing that today, because I don't have much contact with
Right. So it's been over 20 years, as you said, since you stopped being involved in that center. So during that time, have you been involved in any other Holocaust-related organizations or work?
No.
So then tell me why now, after over 20 years of really not being involved in the Holocaust education world, why you have expressed interest to me and my team here at HMTC in speaking again and being involved.
Well, how much time I've got? 10 minutes. I came to this museum soon after I lived in America. I visited here and met somebody and told them that I was a survivor, and they informed me that they would get in touch with me. Mm-hmm. They never got in touch with me. So I didn't come back here because it's quite a drive. Although I was very much interested because this museum apparently has more photographic stuff than we had in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I got involved with the Jewish Center here by somebody invited me to come to a meeting, and I went there and met some people and met some young people who were very openly interested in meeting a Holocaust survivor. Sooner or later, I met Dana, and Dana told me about here, and she invited me to come here, and that's how I am here today.
All right. So, as you know, we've had conversations about having you potentially speak to students here at the museum, and Dana, who's our documentarian, has gone, has interviewed you and now has filmed your entire testimony. And now we're sitting here today having this conversation. So it's important, obviously, to point out that there are so many different avenues for sharing one's story and testimony. And so I'm personally very grateful and glad that despite in the past, whoever it was that didn't get in touch with you, you've now given us a second chance, and that we are doing everything we can to make sure that your testimony is getting out there, because it's important. Every survivor's testimony is important.
I agree. I think we're living in an era that anti-Semitism is growing by day, it seems like.
Yeah.
I am in touch with people in Israel. I used to be in touch with people in Switzerland, in Australia. These are places that I visited before. And I got the same word that anti-Semitism is, instead of going negatively, it's going positive.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important that we Jews remind people what happened in the past. I'm now getting to be 96 in a few months. I don't know how much time I have left, but I think I'd like to use some of it to help people tell the past and hopefully somehow influence current civilization that Jews are not really that bad a bunch.
Absolutely. Well, as we know from Jewish education and Holocaust education, most of the world have really never, most of the people in the world, I should say, have never really interacted with anyone Jewish. They don't even know anything really about Judaism except for the little bits and pieces that they see on TV or on the news. And I think that's what's so powerful about firsthand testimony, or even, second generation testimony or third generation, is that when the kids come here to our museum, yes, we show them the galleries, we show them the photos, we show them the artifacts, but after that, when they hear from somebody who either lived through it themselves or their family lived through it, if they're a second or third generation, it makes such a difference. And that's why it's so powerful having someone like you who's there to be able to speak to them directly and share what you lived through and how you survived.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree And I'm willing to do whatever I can to enlighten particularly young people of the danger of believing some of the rumors that are spread these days about Jews in particular. I am very much worried of what's happening to Israel. I'm a supporter of Ben Gurion University and get some of the literature that they send me. And I am very fearful that the world believes some of these horrible people who spread the word that Israel is making all these people die in Gaza because they don't have food. And it's a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we know that this type of misinformation and propaganda, we see how quickly it spreads. You know, we see what happened with the Holocaust, how you have the German government, the Nazi regime, able to spread this type of hatred and propaganda, and people by and large just believe it. And that's why it's so critical that we're doing this work and having you as just, you know, a piece of that work, being able to share your story, because we all have things we bring to the table. We have people who bring the historical to the table, people who bring the contemporary, and then people like you who are able to bring what you personally experienced. And that is irreplaceable. That is something that to the kids is so meaningful. And we see that when we work with kids here at the museum, which most kids who come to us by and large are not Jewish. They may have some Jewish classmates or Jewish teachers, but for the most part, they're not Jewish and they don't know much about Judaism or the Holocaust. But we see, you know, in front of our eyes, how the testimonies impact them and how they're changed and they're really moved by it. And people like yourself who speak here get letters oftentimes from the kids afterwards. They'll send letters and cards, thank you notes, because they really are impacted by these testimonies. And that's why it's so important. And so, like I said, I am extremely grateful to have you here now as a part of our community and someone who's willing to speak to these students, because that's half the battle.
Thank you. I see you brought a page that I sent you, the first page of my life story.
Yes.
And actually, I'm very disappointed that the Holocaust Center didn't respond to my request on that story. Because it was put together over a period of about a month. And some of us worked very hard to make that story complete. I almost think that one of these days I might have to drive over and see what I can do to get them to release that whole digital story.
Yes. Well, you know, it's of course important that they have the information on you that you worked so hard on with them quite a number of years ago. And that's why we're doing what we're doing today, having this type of conversation so that we ourselves can have our own online information. Now, moving forward, when anybody who is interested or connected with our museum wants to know more about John Woolf, they can go to our website and they can see this episode that we have recorded. And this is just one way that they can learn about you, read about you, and hear you in your own words speaking about why you do what you do. And that's what's so important, because a lot of people, I think, deserve to know and want to know, why do you do this? Because you could easily have just, you know, continued your life without becoming involved again in Holocaust education. You didn't have to reopen this side of history that you had kind of left behind when you left New Jersey a couple decades ago. So it's important.
Zach, it was good to meet you.
Yes, it is very, very good.
I think our time is up.
Yes, our time is just about up. But thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you being here today and having this conversation with me, really.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So to all of our listeners, thank you so much as always. You can find more of our podcasts and anything else related to HMTC at hmtcli.org.